Some of the more fascinating pieces of evidence in South America have come out recently about these channels and pathways that they've found in the Amazon that could not have been created any other way.
For centuries, the Amazon has concealed mysteries no one could explain. But everything changed when archaeologists opened a chamber that had remained sealed for ages. What they found wasn't just unexpected, it challenged the very timeline of human history and hinted at a civilization far more advanced than experts ever imagined. The question is, what exactly was hidden beneath the rainforest, and why does it change everything? The dogma of the counterfeit paradise. If you heard or read about South American history, the story of the Amazon was always the same. Experts described it as a vast, untouched wilderness where humans could only live in tiny, scattered tribes. This long-standing narrative became set in stone in 1971 when a famous Smithsonian anthropologist named Betty Meggers published a highly influential book titled Amazonia, Man and Culture in a Counterfeit Paradise, which quickly became the definitive handbook for global researchers. In this book, Meggers argued that despite the beautiful, thick green trees, the Amazon was actually an environmental trap. She believed the intense tropical rain constantly washed away vital nutrients, leaving behind acidic and starved soil. In her view, this harsh environment placed a permanent ceiling on human progress, making large-scale civilization an ecological impossibility. However, this rigid academic belief directly contradicted some of the earliest written eyewitness records in history. Back in 1541, a Spanish conquistador named Francisco de Orellana became the first European to navigate the entire length of the Amazon River. In his detailed travel logs, Orellana swore he saw massive cities filled with millions of people, sprawling marketplaces, and white-walled settlements stretching for miles along the riverbanks. Instead of taking his journals seriously, mainstream scholars spent centuries laughing them off. They systematically dismissed his detailed accounts as wild, feverish fantasies or substance-induced hallucinations. More so, academics claimed Orellana was a desperate storyteller who invented myths of golden kingdoms to trick the Spanish crown into funding more expensive expeditions. And because there were no stone castles or standing stone monuments left behind, similar to those in Mexico or Peru, the experts confidently assumed the conquistador was lying, and that the jungle had always been a pristine space. It was far easier for the elite academic world to believe a dead traveler was a liar than to rethink everything they knew about early civilizations. But what these scientists failed to realize was the brutal nature of the rainforest itself. The Amazon experiences a unique preservation crisis due to its harsh weather. The extreme humidity, non-stop rainfall, and highly acidic dirt create a highly destructive combination. Also, organic building materials such as wood, palm thatch, woven textiles, and even human bones completely rot and dissolve within a few decades. Since the local populations lacked easy access to stone, they constructed their entire world from earth and timber, meaning their physical footprint melted back into the jungle almost as soon as they abandoned it. So, because of this rapid decay, traditional ground-based archaeology was practically impossible. And for nearly a century, research teams walked through the dense undergrowth with machetes, completely blind to what was under their boots. A team could hike within 2 feet of a massive ancient dirt platform or a giant defensive wall and mistake it for a natural hill. The thick layers of vines and trees hid everything perfectly, keeping the deep secrets of the past safe from human eyes. Yet, the dogmatic fortress of the pristine wilderness was about to be utterly annihilated not by traditional trowels, but by beams of light cutting cleanly through the forest from the sky. The LiDAR revolution. Well, this game-changing tool is called LiDAR, which stands for Light Detection and Ranging. Instead of digging blindly in the thick mud, scientists began strapping these advanced laser scanners onto the bellies of airplanes and low-flying drones. As these aircraft cruise high above the endless sea of jungle leaves, the devices fire down an astonishing barrage of hundreds of thousands of laser pulses every single second. These invisible beams pierce straight through the tiny gaps between the dense canopy branches, bouncing off whatever hidden secrets lie on the forest floor below. But then, the true magic happens when this massive wave of raw data hits specialized computer software. You know, the system calculates the incredibly minute timing gaps it takes for each individual laser reflection to return back up to the sensor. And by analyzing these tiny fragments of time, the software mathematically strips away the thick, multi-layered forest vegetation from the final visual image. What is left behind on the screen is a flawless, color-coded 3D digital elevation model of the bare ground. This created a massive technological acceleration that completely broke the old rules of archaeology. A single afternoon flight could accurately map vast swaths of hidden terrain that would take ground teams multiple lifetimes to survey on foot. Immediately, the powerful technology quickly became the vital backbone of major international initiatives and regional mapping networks. One of the most critical efforts is Amazônia Revelada, an ambitious project led by prominent Brazilian archaeologist Eduardo Neves from the University of São Paulo. Neves and his collaborative team realized that the clock was ticking because of rapid modern deforestation across South America. So, they began systematically flying over highly threatened jungle zones, using these advanced airborne lasers to document the rich historical landscape before modern industrial machinery could erase it forever. When the researchers sat down to review the newly processed data, the shocking images appearing on their computer screens left them completely speechless. Out of the pitch darkness of the ancient jungle floor came an incredible sight. The high-resolution screens clearly showed mathematically perfect geometric enclosures, flawless parallel lines, and massive concentric ring structures buried deep underneath generations of wild growth. These sharp angles and massive shapes were clearly not the work of random nature. The researchers experienced a profound realization as they stared quietly at the glowing pixels. What generations of previous explorers, colonial conquerors, and skeptical modern academics had mistaken for ordinary natural ridges, riverbanks, and jungle hills were actually the heavily eroded foundations of a massive, lost urban reality. The ancient people of the Amazon had radically reshaped the face of the earth, leaving behind an intentional footprint that only beams of light could see. As these raw laser maps were processed, one specific valley sitting quietly in the shadow of the Andes revealed an ancient urban footprint so vast it shocked the global scientific community. The discovery at Upano Valley. Surprisingly, the location that shattered the old paradigm is a stunning strip of land tucked away in eastern Ecuador known as the Upano Valley. For decades, a dedicated French archaeologist named Stéphane Rostand hacked through the dense brush on foot, convinced the valley was hiding an enormous secret. When the Ecuadorian government finally backed a full aerial laser survey, the resulting images revealed an incredibly organized agrarian urbanism dating back more than 2,500 years to roughly 500 before the Common Era. According to their groundbreaking study published in the journal Science, this highly advanced Amazonian civilization was thriving dynamically at the exact same moment the Roman Republic was expanding its imperial borders across the Mediterranean Sea. While Europeans were building the foundation of Western civilization, ancient engineers in South America were quietly constructing their own massive metropolitan miracle. And the sheer physical scale of this newly mapped settlement network is definitely a lot. The laser data exposed more than 6,000 artificial earthen platforms, ceremonial plazas, and residential mounds meticulously organized across 15 distinct, self-contained urban clusters. These were not random mounds of dirt thrown together in a hurry. Each platform was a precise rectangular engineering marvel measuring up to 20 meters wide, 10 meters deep, and several meters high. The ancient builders specifically designed these raised structures to lift domestic homes, cooking spaces, and religious areas safely above the muddy, rain-drenched valley floor. By altering the geography of the land, they conquered the intense tropical downpours that would have washed away a normal village. As scientists zoomed into the high-resolution maps, specific settlement nodes such as Cunguins and Nijiamanch came into sharp focus. The detailed layouts proved these individual clusters were not isolated, lonely tribal outposts hiding from the world. Instead, they formed a beautifully unified, highly integrated metropolitan system. Wide, straight streets dug directly into the earth connected the various neighborhoods, running over hills and valleys without any regard for the challenging natural terrain. Surrounding these residential platforms were extensive agricultural terraces and beautifully drained fields where farmers grew corn, beans, and sweet potatoes. This was a sprawling garden urbanism where city life and food production blended together flawlessly. You see, the socio-political implications of this discovery completely upend our understanding of early human societies. A construction project of this magnitude proves the absolute existence of centralized planning, specialized labor classes, and highly stable governance operating continuously over an entire millennium. Thousands of people had to work in perfect harmony to move millions of cubic meters of earth, manage complex drainage canals, and build massive public plazas. This was a highly sophisticated society that managed to thrive for 1,000 years before vanishing into the green shadows. But the Upano Valley was merely the northern gate. Thousands of miles to the south, an entirely different, water-bound empire was building monumental complexes out of the swamp mud. The Kasarabe Pyramids. Now, if you look at the southwestern edge of the Amazon basin in Bolivia, you will see a wild, shifting world of grass and water called the Llanos de Moxos. This unique landscape is a dynamic maze of ecological extremes, defined by severe seasonal flooding that regularly transforms the flat grasslands into a massive inland sea for months out of the year, leaving only elevated jungle islands poking through the wild waters. For a long time, traditional historians assumed no major civilization could ever survive such an unpredictable, waterlogged environment. However, that old assumption completely fell apart when a German archaeologist named Heiko Prümers decided to fly over the swampy plains using a helicopter equipped with advanced LiDAR technology. By doing this, Prümers aimed to unlock the mysteries of the enigmatic Kasarabe culture, a highly organized society that thrived dynamically in this region from roughly 500 to 1400 AD. What the research team discovered hidden underneath the dense tree canopy completely shocked the international scientific world. Their groundbreaking study, published in the scientific journal Nature, revealed the existence of massive, four-tiered earthen step pyramids rising up to 22 meters into the air, which is roughly the height of a 7-story apartment building. Now, discovering these colossal structures completely shattered the classic academic myth that ancient Amazonians never built monumental, sacred architecture. And because these people lacked local stone quarries, the brilliant builders used the heavy clay mud beneath their feet, baking and layering the earth to construct giant religious platforms that could easily withstand the intense tropical elements. More so, the new laser maps unraveled a highly sophisticated regional hierarchy, anchored by two primary mega-settlements, known as Kotoka and Landivar. These sprawling urban sites were not temporary ceremonial centers where people gathered occasionally. Instead, they functioned as massive, highly fortified political and religious capitals that controlled the surrounding countryside. To protect their citizens, the Kasarabe engineered incredible defensive infrastructure surrounding these urban centers. The computer data showed complex systems of concentric earthen walls, deep protective moats filled with water, and restricted access checkpoints that allowed ancient guards to monitor anyone trying to enter the urban core. When modern engineers calculated the sheer volume of human labor required to build these swamp cities, the numbers turned out to be completely mind-boggling. Millions of cubic meters of heavy earth had to be systematically excavated by hand, transported across muddy terrain without the help of horses or oxen, and carefully shaped into precise geometric formations. An infrastructure project of this massive scale clearly indicates a highly stratified society with a powerful administrative authority capable of organizing thousands of citizens, managing large agricultural food supplies, and directing complex engineering tasks over multiple generations. The Kasarabe were master coordinators who successfully turned an unlivable swamp into a structured, powerful empire. Yet, mapping these massive administrative hubs from the sky was only the first step. The true shock came when researchers finally breached the sealed innermost chambers of these ancient complexes. The Forbidden Chamber, unearthing the earthen enclosures. The ground reality of these discoveries required an immense amount of physical grit. So, guided by precise coordinates from aerial laser maps and ground-penetrating radar, teams of archaeologists scrambled through the thick undergrowth, hacking away at massive tree roots and digging deep into the heavy, sticky clay. As they carefully cleared the floor, the air was thick with heavy heat and swarming insects. Soon enough, they found themselves staring at a massive, structurally sealed ritual enclosure that had been deliberately packed with thick layers of alluvial river sediment centuries ago. This intentional earthen seal acted as a protective time capsule, safely shielding the sacred spaces hidden deep within the platform mounds. Carefully breaking through this heavy earthen barrier, the researchers cleaned away the loose dirt to expose a beautifully preserved architectural layout. They uncovered highly flat, reinforced clay floors that had been packed tight and baked to resist the constant tropical moisture. Thick, dark circular stains in the dirt revealed the precise locations of heavy internal supporting posts that once held up monumental timber roofs. What was even more surprising was the discovery of distinct subsurface chambers built directly into the core of the platforms. These hidden rooms were clearly engineered to function as elite vaults, designed to protect the most sacred objects away from the general public. The artifacts resting inside these deep chambers left the excavation teams completely breathless. They unearthed beautifully preserved complex pottery and large ceremonial vases decorated with deeply incised geometric patterns. Among the most stunning finds were small ceramic effigies bearing intricate human-faced details, complete with expressive eyes that seemed to stare directly back at the modern observers. This discovery perfectly matches recent archaeological digs across the basin that have uncovered similar pieces. The high level of artistry showed that these ancient builders were not struggling to survive, but possessed the wealth to support master craftspeople. When scientists analyzed the materials used to make these artifacts, they uncovered an even bigger surprise that completely rewrote the economic history of the region. Inside the clay vaults, they discovered specialized tools made of non-local volcanic stone and exotic marine shells from distant ocean waters. And being that these items are completely foreign to the stone-free, clay-heavy interior of the Amazon, they serve as definitive proof that these hidden chambers acted as major wealth repositories. They connected the deep jungle to massive, continent-spanning trade networks that reached all the way to the Caribbean coast and the high peaks of the Andes Mountains. These hidden rooms functioned as the core spiritual engine of the entire civilization. Inside these sacred spaces, an elite class of priests performed complex, secretive rituals designed to manage the agricultural cycle, track astronomical movements, and placate powerful cosmic forces. When we look deeper, we realize that the survival of millions of people depended on the decisions made within these earthen walls. To maintain these massive populations gathering around these sacred vaults, these ancient engineers had to solve a fundamental crisis: how to grow endless food on the world's most infertile soil. Let's take a look at the dirt itself. Terra preta, the manufactured soil that fed millions. If you dig a hole in the natural Amazon rainforest, you will find a bright yellow or pale red soil known as a latosol. These natural soils are incredibly poor in nutrients because thousands of years of heavy tropical downpours have completely washed away the vital minerals that plants need to survive. And if you try to clear a patch of this natural forest to grow crops, the soil completely fails after a single season or two. This was the exact environmental trap that early anthropologists believed would permanently prevent any large civilization from growing. Yet, scattered all over the basin, modern scientists keep stumbling across massive, thick patches of a completely different earth, known as Amazonian dark earth, or Terra preta de Indio. This soil is deep black, incredibly rich, and packed with vital organic matter. What is more amazing is that these black soil zones remain intensely fertile today, centuries after the cultures who made them disappeared into history. If you plant a crop in this dark earth, it explodes with life, yielding massive amounts of food compared to the surrounding yellow ground. However, This miracle dirt did not happen by accident. It is entirely anthropogenic, meaning it was deliberately manufactured by human hands. Over generations, ancient Amazonian communities perfected a highly sophisticated chemical recipe to build this super soil from scratch. They started by creating low-temperature charcoal through a process of slow, smoldering vegetation fires. Then, they systematically mixed this charcoal directly into the earth, along with organic kitchen waste, animal bones, plant debris, and millions of broken pottery fragments. The brilliant science behind this mixture comes down to the charcoal itself. Under a microscope, charcoal has a highly porous structure filled with millions of microscopic holes. This structure acts as a permanent sponge in the dirt. It safely traps vital nutrients such as phosphorus, nitrogen, and calcium, binding them tightly so they cannot be washed away by torrential tropical rains. At the same time, the thousands of broken pottery shards help keep the soil loose and well aerated, creating an excellent environment for beneficial microbes to multiply and thrive. But then, the true shock is the massive scale of this ancient operation. Recent scientific estimates suggest that human-made Amazonian dark earth covers up to 10% of the entire Amazon basin, which means these ancient societies transformed an area roughly the size of France. This is not a collection of small backyard garden plots. It represents an environmental engineering feat of planetary proportions. It proves beyond any doubt that the ancient people of the Amazon were not merely living passively inside a wild ecosystem. They were actively manufacturing a sustainable, hyper-productive agricultural landscape capable of feeding millions of citizens for thousands of years. While this miraculous super soil sustained their burgeoning empires, their intellectual lives reached directly toward the cosmos, leaving behind massive stone monuments aligned with the stars. The Stonehenge of the Amazon. Far along the northern edge of Brazil, near the Atlantic coast in Amapá State, you will find an open, grassy ridge that completely disrupts our traditional view of ancient South America. This is the archaeological park of the Solstice, located in the municipality of Calçoene. For years, cattle ranchers walked past a collection of giant, weathered rocks without realizing they were looking at a prehistoric masterpiece. When researchers finally investigated the site, they found 127 massive granite monoliths standing upright on a hilltop. Some of these towering stone blocks reach up to 4 meters in height and are arranged in a mathematically precise circle that measures 30 meters in diameter, looking like a crown sitting at the top of the hill. Immediately, the international media dubbed this incredible structure the Stonehenge of the Amazon because its striking design mirrors the famous stone circles found in Europe. But the real genius of this monument becomes obvious when the calendar flips to the end of the year. Every year on December 21st, during the winter solstice, the sun interacts with the stones in an unforgettable way. As the morning sun rises above the thick rainforest canopy, the shadows cast by these heavy granite blocks align perfectly with the path of the star. In fact, the rays of the sun pass directly through openings in the rocks, creating a precise tracking system. This allowed ancient astronomers to accurately mark the shortest day of the year, providing an immutable solar calendar. Local populations used this cosmic clock to predict the exact arrival of the heavy tropical rainy season, which allowed them to schedule their agricultural activities with absolute accuracy. However, moving these massive stones to the hilltop presented an immense logistical challenge. Geological analysis confirms these rocks are not native to the immediate hill where the circle stands. This means that teams of laborers had to quarry these heavy blocks from distant locations, transporting them across kilometers of challenging jungle terrain and muddy river basins without modern machinery. Building this observatory required a deep understanding of structural engineering and geometry, proving that the local builders possessed advanced technical skills that match other ancient groups. Well, excavations led by prominent archaeologists like Mariana Petri Cabral from the Amapá Institute of Scientific and Technological Research revealed that the site had a dual sacred purpose. Beneath the packed earth, researchers uncovered an elite burial ground filled with highly sophisticated ceramic funerary urns belonging to the ancient Aristei culture. These beautifully decorated vessels contained the remains of high-status individuals, proving that the location was a deeply revered spiritual sanctuary. Now, finding a massive stone observatory completely dismantles the old colonial prejudice that pre-Columbian Amazonians lacked the engineering knowledge or mathematical understanding required for megalithic construction. These people were master scientists who tracked the heavens while honoring their dead. However, these standalone astronomical laboratories were far from isolated. They were key hubs in a jaw-dropping transport infrastructure that bound the entire continent together. The interconnected web. Instead of isolated groups living in a vacuum, these ancient communities were actually part of a massive, continent-spanning network. When anthropologist Michael Heckenberger began mapping ancient sites like Cuhicugu in the upper Chingu region of Brazil, they discovered an unexpected secret. You see, the laser data revealed a mind-boggling grid of dead-straight, wide road networks stretching for dozens of kilometers across jungle plains, deep river basins, and seasonal wetlands. These were not faint footpaths created by wandering hunters. They were major public thoroughfares carved directly into the landscape, perfectly visible from high-altitude flights. The precision of these highways was so remarkable that they often aligned accurately with astronomical solar axes, reflecting a brilliant connection between city planning and the movements of the stars. Also, this grid network seamlessly linked major political capitals with dozens of smaller satellite villages, proving the existence of an organized state. The advanced engineering behind these highways shows a deep understanding of structural mechanics and regional landscape architecture. To beat the highly destructive seasonal floods, the builders constructed elevated earth causeways raised up to several meters above the natural floodlines. These massive roads measured up to 15 meters wide, providing ample room for large groups of citizens to march simultaneously. So, to manage the immense tropical rainfall, ancient engineers flanked these elevated paths with deep drainage canals. These ditches systematically funneled excess water away from the walking surfaces, preventing soil erosion and keeping the transit routes open during the heaviest storm seasons. Laborers spent years excavating and leveling the ground, shifting millions of pounds of earth to ensure these roads remained flat and stable, regardless of the natural terrain. When you contrast this organizational layout with old European cities from the same historical era, the structural differences are absolutely fascinating. While medieval Europe was building hyper-dense, stone-walled cities with cramped, winding alleys, the pre-Columbian Amazon featured a sprawling, low-density model known as garden urbanism. According to research published in Science, this unique design looks remarkably similar to modern green suburban networks. Independent neighborhood hubs were intentionally spread out across a large territory, yet they remained tightly integrated through public infrastructure, successfully combining residential living spaces with extensive agricultural fields and managed forests. This extensive transit web worked hand-in-hand with incredible water management systems that completely reshaped the landscape. Along the highway routes, researchers documented the construction of massive artificial reservoirs, grand canals, and sophisticated fish farming ponds that successfully controlled regional flooding. This infrastructure did more than control nature, because it actively facilitated lightning-fast communication, massive trade networks, and highly coordinated inter-regional religious pilgrimages. The vast road system allowed different cultures across the entire Amazon basin to maintain constant economic and social contact with one another for centuries. Ideas, pottery styles, agricultural techniques, and sacred traditions traveled quickly along these roads, uniting millions of people under a shared continental network. People were constantly sharing vital resources and political alliances across immense distances, creating a dynamic civilization that thrived for generations. And by standing upon these monumental ancient highways, modern science is forced to confront a radical, deeply uncomfortable reality about the true history of the Americas. The new narrative of pre-Columbian America. The old maps and history lessons we knew about are officially outdated. By combining advanced airborne laser scanning with careful ground excavations, modern researchers have completely overturned centuries of Eurocentric historical and ecological dogmas. For generations, the world assumed that advanced societies could only develop in regions with massive stone architecture like Egypt or Rome. However, this new evidence forces us to reject the colonial myth of a pristine, untouched Amazonian wilderness. we must replace it with a fascinating reality, acknowledging a highly modified cultural landscape that was carefully sculpted and managed by human hands. Instead of a few scattered, nomadic tribes wandering aimlessly through the trees, new scientific data reveals a staggering pre-contact population. Experts now estimate that between 8 and 10 million highly civilized people were thriving across the basin before the arrival of Europeans in 1492. The sudden disappearance of this massive population was caused by a tragic, invisible collapse. Deadly Old World pathogens, including smallpox and measles, swept down those interconnected jungle highways far ahead of actual European explorers. This devastating biological wave traveled from village to village, wiping out up to 95% of the population in a matter of decades. Once these grand metropolitan centers became vacant, the hyper-aggressive tropical rainforest took over. The fast-growing jungle canopy completely consumed the earthen platforms, pyramids, and highways within a single century. When later waves of European colonists finally walked through the region, they encountered a dense, wild forest. This created a massive optical illusion of a virgin rainforest, hiding the fact that they were walking directly over the ruins of an empire. Modern science is looking backward to solve future problems. Researchers are analyzing these ancient urban networks to gather vital lessons for sustainability. The way these early cultures managed biodiversity, practiced smart agroforestry, and generated carbon-storing soils offers incredible blueprints for fighting modern climate challenges. Scientific networks like Amazonia Revelada point out that we are still in the absolute infancy of this archaeological renaissance. Tens of thousands of ancient structures are still sleeping beneath the thick green canopy, waiting for a beam of light to wake them up. The forbidden chambers have finally been breached. The green veil has been lifted forever, and the long silent earthworks of the Amazon are finally telling their true story. If a massive, continent-spanning civilization could be completely swallowed by nature and forgotten for centuries, what will future historians find buried beneath our own modern cities 1,000 years from now? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to smash the like button, share, and subscribe to our channel. For more content like this, click on the next video on your screen.